I watched him head up, like I said, the left side, and then cut the corner behind one of the taller tombstones. And as I came around, did my loop, popped back up, it's gone. I was like, where'd that old guy go?
Welcome back once again to Hey, That's Weird, the paranormal storytelling podcast that gives you a stage for your stories. I'm your host, Luc Frost, and as usual, I need to start by thanking those of you who have listened to the show, commented, shared, liked, or even reviewed it. On that note, shout out to DJ Echo 35, Davro 89, and Munchkin 0509 for writing reviews for the show this week. It absolutely made my day reading them. Today, my storyteller is Dan. I've known Dan for a few years, but he recently moved out of town to be closer to his family. Dan has a couple of very interesting and very weird shorter stories. Because they're a little shorter than usual, I decided to release them a week earlier. I guess think of this as a bite-sized bonus episode. Either way, there's still lots to enjoy. Without further ado, Dan, let's get weird.
Hey, my name's Dan, and if you're listening to this, you're probably like me and have an interest in the, I don't know if you would call it supernatural or just things you can't quite explain. Like a lot of you, I'm sure, as a kid, there was nothing more fascinating than, the unknown, whether it be ghosts or Bigfoot, UFOs. I ate all that stuff up. So much so that when I was a kid, actually, I moved from the city to the Fraser Valley to a little town called Harrison Hot Springs. And it was known for being sort of the BC capital for Bigfoot research. And there was a gentleman by the name of John Wilson Green who wrote 3 books that I read on discovering Bigfoot. And I was so excited to find out he lived on the same street as me. Once we moved there, I wandered over 10-year-old me up to this guy who probably was in his 50s and 60s at this point and probably quite done with the whole scrutiny that comes with being a Bigfoot researcher. And I was like,
"Excuse me, Mr. Green, do you think I could ask you some questions about Bigfoot?"
To which he promptly replied,
"Get out of here, kid."
And I was like, yeah, okay, well, maybe not. My mom told me that a little while later he came by the house and he felt bad for scaring me off and asking me if I wanted to come by, but I decided to pass at that point. Anyways, like many things, when you get a little bit older, you sort of leave those fantasies about coming across a Sasquatch or seeing a UFO or what have you behind, and you kind of just sort of realize maybe those are just fairy tales and not necessarily something you're ever going to experience. So that's where it was for me. I kind of left that in my childhood. Fast forward to, I was in my early to mid 20s. It was about 2002, 2003, and I was working for a landscaping gardening company. And we had a contract to maintain some parking lots and boulevards and what have you for the city. And it was really easy gig. But in that contract, one of the places we did was a cemetery out in Tsawwassen, Boundary Bay Cemetery to be exact. That was kind of cool, at first. It's like, oh, yeah, all right, let's go and, cut some grass around some tombstones. And we did that for quite a few years. Now, after the first few weeks of doing it, it's a weird thing, right? Especially when you're trimming around some of the tombstones and you're taking a look at the names and the dates on there, and you're like, oh man, like this person's my age, right? Or this person, passed away not too long ago, and you would start to see the same people coming to grieve on a weekly basis, and it went from being kind of cool to kind of sad, actually. Now, being an older cemetery, I think they've updated it since, but you would come in off the main drag and there was kind of like a little tiny dirt road that led to the gates that they would lock at night. Like I said, I believe that's been changed since, but we would park along those gravel roads and, wait for the gates to open, and then we'd pull in there. Now, being a cemetery, you can imagine there's a lot of grass to cut, and it was sort of laid out in a grid area. And when they originally, I think, started burying people there, the place went on somewhat of an incline up, I wouldn't necessarily call it a hill, but once you got to the top of it, there was fencing all the way around, and there was kind of a drop-off. Not necessarily a cliff, but not something you could easily access if you didn't come in through the main gates. And then below it, a bunch of trees and forest area, and then they had a new development behind it. So when you got up to the top, that's where the cool stuff was, right? That's where like the old big crosses were, the very gothic looking tombstones, and those ones, 1920 and so on and so forth. Just great atmosphere. They got the little railings around it, little stuff you would picture in like an old Hammer horror movie or something, right? Anyways, did this place for quite a few years, and there was this one time, oddly enough, it was close to fall, just as we were getting to the spooky season, and getting there first thing in the morning, you'd still have that kind of dew on the grass, and it'd be very misty. Like I said to you before, you get used to seeing the same people there. So to cut this thing, we had big, large ride-on mowers, right? You'd sit on it, you'd go up one patch, come around, go back and forth. So as you're going around, you'd kind of see people come and go. It's pretty early. I'd say we started cutting by about maybe 8:39. People usually didn't start rolling in till about 10:30, 11. Noon, it would get somewhat busy. But I'm going up there. It started at the top. I was going to work my way back. As I was going up, the very far corner of it, I could see an older gentleman kind of hunching along and making his way up the far left side to the older area. And I was like, oh boy, that guy's out early. Not only was he out early, I was like, he sure got himself spruced up. He was wearing a very distinctive black hat, like a Monopoly hat. He had on like a tuxedo and he had long tails. And I was like, that is good for him, man. That is an outfit. So anyways, I watched him head up, like I said, the left side, and then cut the corner behind one of the taller tombstones. And as I came around, did my loop, popped back up, it's gone. I was like, where'd that old guy go? He wasn't moving very fast. He couldn't have got too far. And like I said, at the top end of this old cemetery, there was nowhere to go. There was no side access. There was no gate that went off the back, because if you did even hop over that gate, which wasn't very, the fence, it wasn't very tall, but it was just basically a straight drop off. And a guy in his condition and his attire, he wasn't going anywhere. So I did 2 or 3 loops, kept looking for this guy. And it's like the hair on my arms, the back of my neck stood right up. I was like, what is going on? This is tripping me out, to the point where I abandoned what I was doing. The big bag that was catching all the clippings, I just ejected that off and burned right back down to the gates where the rest of the crew was. And I'm just like, did you guys see that dude with the top hat and the tails? Like,
no one's come through here, man. Like, we just got started.
and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Come on, stop messing around. And then I burned back up again, and I started tooling around, nothing. Couldn't see the guy. Finally, there was a caretaker, and he was there on a daily basis, didn't live there or anything. We used to call him Norman. He was a little bit of a flamboyant Norman Bates character. I always talked about how he was having to make sure Mother had her dinner, and he's going to pick up some flowers. He would actually talk about stealing flowers from services so he could bring them back to Mother. I was like, yeah, okay, this is something else. I went back down and I said, hey, Norm, did you see anybody come through here? I swear to God, I saw an old guy making his way up the left side there by the old section, and he's just gone. He's all,
Was he wearing a top hat and tails?
and I was like, yeah.
Yeah. He likes to show up every now and again. It's weird, eh?
I asked Dan for a few more details on the old guy that he saw in the graveyard. Was he transparent, like your classic ghost, or just a regular-looking guy? Here's what he had to say.
It's just an older guy. If I had to guess, he looked like he was probably in his late 60s, early 70s. Walked with a hunch, and it was just a very steady 1, 2, 1, 2. And like I said, he stuck out for those two reasons. One, how he was moving, and two, the way he was dressed. It was just, you could not see him. As I'm coming down, you clock him, took a look, and then I make my loop, expecting him to be right where he was, maybe only a few feet more. But as I made the corner, there's the gigantic tombstone that he kind of disappeared behind. Could not see him. There was nowhere for anyone to go. And I remember I pulled right to the end and leaned over the fence, just trying to see if I could see where this guy went. And he just nothing, just gone. So this other story, it's not as interesting, I think, as coming across potentially a ghost in a graveyard. But I was out in Agassiz, a town I grew up in for the most part, just outside of Harrison Hot Springs. I was probably in my mid to late teens, and I was coming back from a party. Back in that time, I was not a drinker. I didn't do any drugs, so I wasn't under the influence of marijuana or anything. It was probably about 11:30, 12:30, somewhere around that midnight hour, and I was walking home on the main drag. And like I said, anyone who's been out in that Fraser Valley area, Agassiz is like a one traffic light town. There's nothing there. Once 7, 8 o'clock hits, place is dead. So I'm walking on the main drag back to my place, and these are also back before the days of smartphones and listening to things every time you leave the house. You're just sitting there alone with your thoughts, and eyes down at your feet, just kind of making your way to your destination. And for some reason, I just had this inkling to look skyward. And I look up, and way off in the distance, way above, there is this huge light. When I say huge, not so much that it's illuminating everything around, it's just bright. As soon as I looked at it, the only way I can describe it is if you were lining up to take a picture with somebody, and it was an old camera with a flash, and once that flash went, you've got that sort of trails that go side to side. The only other way I can describe it is if you were to take a sparkler and you wave it around really fast, and it leaves sort of a trail before it disappears. And I'm just standing there looking at this thing that is now gone. Again, it was like that. It was over. It was like a flash, a stream, and gone. And I'm frozen, and much like when I saw the old guy in the graveyard, all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I just start sweating, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. Hightailed it home as fast as I could. Got through the door. Like I said, I was a teenager, so I was, still living with parental guidance. And I opened the door, and the first thing I heard is,
Where the hell have you been?
I was like, what are you talking about? I know I said I'd be home at 12. It's like 11:30. It was 2 in the morning, and I have no idea how that happened, because I know for a fact did not want to be late for curfew, because that was going to lead to many problems that I didn't want to deal with at that time. So where that time went, I have no idea. Am I making some sort of claim that I may have left Agassiz for who knows how long? No. All I can tell you is what I experienced. And much like the graveyard scene, I thought that one was pretty weird.
My entire life, I've been obsessed with UFOs. I was all in. Are people being taken, messed with, and then dropped back to Earth with limited memory? Who knows? More recently, I've seen how the UFO community has changed, and not for the better. Many people seem to be trying to profit off the topic and fabricating sensational stories and theories rather than doing any actual research. So I have to admit, it's lost a bit of its charm for me. That being said, I'm still extremely interested to hear about anyone's experience. I decided this was a good time to ask Dan the burning question. What did he think this was? And does he believe in UFOs to this day?
I think you would have to be pretty arrogant to think that we're it. I think when you have stuff out there that can't be explained and people come forward and they give their experiences, there is going to be a healthy mix of people who are being truthful and spitting out facts, and then there's people that just want to be a part of something. You're going to get that from all things like UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever, right? Bigfoot, I don't know if I believe it, but UFOs, yeah, 100%, man. There's something out there for sure. As far as ghosts and stuff, I just think there's just things we can't understand. Like I said, when I was a kid, totally was like on board for all that stuff, and then you just kind of let it go. But yeah, I just think if we can't comprehend something completely, sometimes you're just like, oh, it's bullshit. It doesn't exist. You're daydreaming. But it's the fact that we just can't comprehend it. We don't understand how it works, right?
A massive thanks to Dan for jumping on the show and telling me his stories. My favourite thing about this podcast so far is the vulnerability and trust people have shown me to come on and tell their stories. I can't thank the guests enough who have come in and recorded an episode with me, and trusted me with what they have to say. If you have a story and you'd like to share it, even anonymously, reach out to me via the Instagram account at HeyThat'sWeirdPodcast, or via email at heythat'sweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, stay weird.